All right, here we go. Here we go. Hey everyone, how's the music? It's a lounge music tune. Uh, we still waiting for some, or actually for a lot of people. We had over 700 people registering for this event, so we are waiting for the bunch, but we don't have time to waste. So I am making sure that for those that are running late, we're still going to be rolling, and we will figure out later when they're gonna join. Either we're gonna have some the recording or we can do it again, right? But we need to go rolling because there's a lot of things that we wanted to talk with you today, and there's no time. So first of all, thank you so much, guys, who are joining us on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, who's registered for this. It's a special event for me because this is one of those events that I would like to do every year because the outbound landscape is changing and we want it to be on top of things, on top of the updates. And because I have a privilege to be working with some of the best people in the industry and with some of the best partners, I wanted others to have access to the people, to the knowledge, to the insights, and not just keep it for myself or for the people, right? So we need to share knowledge, we need to educate each other, we need to collaborate because the collaborative growth is the only way for us to succeed. So yeah, so I was able to put together this event with a few folks that I know, that I've collaborated with, that I know they are pros, they are industry leaders. And what I'll do, let me put on real quick here what we're gonna expect today. All right, so all right, I just wanted to make sure that you see it. Perfect. All right, so here's the agenda for today. So the format for this event is super interesting. So we're gonna have 6 speakers, each speaker prepared packed information for you during 10 minutes, and then we have Q&A with each speaker, and then I can bring everyone together in the round table, and then we can have a conversation. So hey, make sure that you ask questions, make sure you engage, make sure you share this on social, and let's learn, let's disrupt the outbound and again and have fun and enjoy it, right? I will be hosting and also I'll be changing some manipulations as we go. So yeah, I think we'll just go ahead and start. Again, make sure you ask questions in the chat, make sure you engage, and let's have fun. All right, so the first person that I'd like to bring on today is Taylor Ryan, CMO of Ocean.io. All right. Hey, Taylor.
Hey.
Hey, how are you?
I am good. How are you?
We are great. Chat, are we great or not? Put more emojis, put more action in the chat. We wanted to see, or we wanted to support Taylor and what he's about to share with all of us. Taylor, so why don't you introduce yourself and your company and what you guys do?
Sure. My name is Taylor Ryan. I am the Chief Marketing Officer of Ocean.io. I'm a 6-time startup founder, originally from the Washington, D.C. area, but hanging out in Copenhagen, Denmark these days. I've scaled 4 companies to exit, ran my own agency, and I've worked extremely close with a lot of different blockchain solutions over the last 4.5, 5 years. Started working with Ocean not too long ago, and it's a really interesting platform for those that are struggling to find new and interesting ways to discover interesting companies to go after, and then ultimately to target these companies. It's a really cool use case. It blends a bit of discovery in a SaaS solution with some of the different AI tools that I've really enjoyed using. I've personally used it prior to coming on board as an agency that did a lot of outbound stuff, and yeah, it seems to work really well. So I'm going to run through a lot of stuff based off of intent and kind of how to do some cool stuff within the funnel.
I love to learn from you and learn more about the approach of the data sourcing you guys have. Is the reason because leads are the foundation of the outbound. Like I've spoken about this many times, the fact that the quality of your lead list would be tremendous the ground of your success. Whatever you're doing with your templates, with your SDR work, with everyone, if your leads are of a poor quality, you're done, right? So that's what we're going to talk today about. And I will assist Taylor with some of those slides just to make it more efficient for him. So let's roll. All right. So Taylor, what you are showing us today, what you're talking about today?
I'm going to be bouncing around quite a bit, but I'm going to start with, I'm just going to dig in. Let's just do this. So I think it's really important to lay some foundations, and I tend to try to hit that from different angles. So I want to first talk about the standard marketing funnel. You have awareness, interest, decision, and action. And when I start trying to source a list, I try to figure out what does my audience know from the awareness standpoint. Usually you have kind of these three different areas that they fall into. The people are unaware of the problem, and therefore you need to inform and educate. They're unaware of the problem and unaware of different solutions. And then they're potentially unaware of the problem and actually may be aware of different solutions on the market, at which case you probably need to do a little bit more on the differentiator between obviously what they're aware of and other competitors of yours. Then I start looking at who are the people that are already interested in a solution like I'm selling. And that could be people that are already in the research stage. That could be people that are reviewing solutions based off of price, features, all that other stuff. And maybe there's even a few people that are in the consideration phase, which is basically they're ready to take action. They just need to know a couple of small things. I then start looking at what are the key things that most people absolutely need to understand when I'm selling to them before they make a buying decision. And usually it comes down to just a handful of things. We've all been there. It's need, timing, and resources. I often find that when my messaging incorporates all of the above through usually a sequence, people get super excited. The last kind of stage of this is thinking about how can I get people to act? Because if you are cold calling or if you're emailing, regardless, you need some type of action item that's going to provide value or get them interested in what it is that you're selling. So I found some interesting ways to create intent, and I'll share just a couple of examples. One is creating a case study playbook where you're able to figure out exactly what people are hoping to get out of the end solution of using your product or service. And if you have one really good customer, then that should be what you preach to when you're talking to brand new customers. The next one would be competitor FOMO. So I always try to find interesting ways of making people feel this really big sense of like, man, I feel like I'm missing all the opportunities here because my competitors are lapping me. Everybody has that insecurity that runs a business. So ultimately, if you can find some interesting ways to point out what other competitors are doing, you have a chance to kind of squeeze in. And the last one that I've played with a lot is sending people an imperfect solution. This doesn't obviously work with smiling and dialing, but I can provide a couple of quick examples. So when I go to send somebody a version of an imperfect solution, this is usually a template or this is some type of high value piece of content. I always try to figure out what are they asking before they make a buying decision. And usually that comes in a couple of different flavors, and I'll give a few different examples. So I worked for a company called Planday. It was an hourly shift worker app, probably one of the least sexy things in the world. It allowed people to do employee scheduling, and the idea was, hey, I can take a spreadsheet that is basically like a template off of Microsoft Excel and basically change a couple of things and offer that as a free giveaway. I would then reach out afterwards and say, hey, how did that sheet work out for you? I know that was something you might have been interested in. And most of the time they're gonna be like, well, it sucked. It didn't solve my problem. It's like, I know. We created an entire platform over the span of 4 years to actually solve this problem. Why don't you check out the platform? I've done this with a construction project management tool. I've done this with internal communication software. I've done this with AI tools. You'd be surprised how well an imperfect solution, when handed over to somebody, is this kind of beginning of a conversation where it's like, yeah, most people are going to use something that doesn't work. Take a look at what actually does, and this is what we're really selling. It's a really interesting hack to kind of get in front of people in a unique way. One of the other things that, and I'm paying close attention on time, I still have time. So I find a lot of really cool ways to find and steal my competitors' best customers. And usually that comes in the form of looking at where my competitors talk about their best customers. That comes in the form of trust signals. So those are logos on your competitors' websites, case studies where your competitors are listing out all the great things they've done for the people that they're working with, whether it's partners, clients, whatever. I've also figured out how to find testimonials across my competitors' pages. And this allows me to start building these really interesting lists. And I also have an interesting ask. If I know that my competitors are working with these people, I can say, hey, I know that you're working with, insert the name of my competitor. I'd be really interested in showing you what we could do because I have a feeling that you're going to really love whatever your key differentiator is. Then you might even be...
You're talking about the second point, right? Like find and steal your competitors' best customers here on the things to keep in mind when building the list in 2024. Is
Correct.
that right? Okay,
yes.
Perfect. All right. So guys, this is the list from Taylor about how you can be the best in the lead sourcing game. Okay, Taylor, sorry, go ahead.
Sure. So there's different ways to automate this. I would say if you're at all tech savvy or want to be tech savvy, there's tons of scraping tools that allow you to go across all kinds of websites. So any type of website that allows you, especially if you're in the SaaS space, to compare your solution to somebody else's. So we're talking Capterra, GitApp, Software Advice, etc. You can use tools like WebScraper.io, Octoparse, Data Miner. There's so many that would allow you to start pulling some of those competitors out. You could also hire a virtual assistant if you wanted to do that. I've also created many ChatGPT 4 plus the browser add-on to be able to do this almost automatically. And I usually would include that in a presentation. We just didn't have room for it. I'd say one of the more interesting things that I've worked out and had a lot of success with, and I've also managed to use Ocean for, is looking at the competitors of my competitors' favorite customers. Right. So let's say one of my competitors listed Ticketmaster as one of their amazing clients. I would then look up StubHub, SeatGeek, Rival, Boleto, Ticketfly. And I could do that manually, or I could use a couple of different tools to find the competitors of these companies. And you create this element of FOMO saying, hey, I know that, insert the name of this company, maybe it's Ticketmaster, is using a tool like this. I think we have a pretty interesting solution that you might be really open to checking out, considering you want to keep up with the Joneses. Why don't we take 20 minutes and I can show you how all these things work. I can send you, et cetera, et cetera. And people actually take a look at that because, again, it creates FOMO. It creates this element of, oh, I'm not keeping up with the Joneses. So I tend to build a lot of best customers of my competitors of those. It's a hard thing to describe. But ultimately, this is kind of what Ocean's about. Ocean created a really interesting solution, which is their lookalike feature. We recently opened this up for free trials. Up until the last month, this wasn't a thing. And so we've seen a crazy amount of signups and a lot of activity around what we call our lookalike feature. So type in any of your best customers and you can instantly get a gigantic list of companies that are similar in many ways to that particular customer. You can start to shape some of the message. Yeah, me too.
Listen, a lot of what we used to was the filtering, right? Like we filtered based on the industry, we filtered based on the title, but these days already are gone, right? We wanted to use the lookalike. Like this is my best customers. Show me what are the other companies that are similar to what they're doing, not necessarily. And again, the fact that AI is here to help us to build this list is amazing. And it's also interesting the recommendation that you gave. It shows the way that we used to do the list building is already gone. It's not just paying the monthly subscription and just filtering out and exporting the list. You need to be smart about it, right? You need to enrich your data. You need to use a lookalike. You need to use intent. But in this way, you can be successful. All right, I think we have five minutes for questions, guys. In the chat, if you have question for Taylor about the Ocean IO or the questions or the intent or about the leads, go ahead in the chat. I'll be happy to pull up those questions and then we can chat. While we're waiting for the people in the chat to give the questions, I have a question for you. Do you guys utilize like AI, a lot of the AI in the Ocean or not? What's the AI part of the product?
Yeah, so one of the things that I think companies are notoriously bad at is self-describing. And when you're going off of either a self-description or a categorization that one would put on, let's say, their LinkedIn profile, there's only so many ways to differentiate one company to another.
Right.
So Ocean's AI is really interesting in terms of how it's taking a matching algorithm to this company is similar to this company due to so many of the different scraped elements of not only their website, LinkedIn description, some of the LinkedIn profiles. So it's allowing you to do some really advanced filtering on a intent level, but also on a self-described and not self-described level, which I think is different from any other enrichment or data production tool that I've come across.
Wow. Do you have any information in terms of the costs or conversions from leads like that? Like maybe some of your customers reported. What is like the average I can expect from a lead into appointment or into a deal, or any like benchmark that you can share right now?
I wish I had more specific data on that. I think every industry, as I'm sure you're aware, is
Right.
a little different.
Yeah.
You can do a quick Google search for conversion rate by industry. And anytime you're
Gotcha.
looking at whether it's cold calling or, I don't know, like cost per lead for
Yeah.
Facebook ads,
Mhm.
there's giant chasms between the pricing there. So it's always going to be different.
With regards to the to the sort of like quality or the availability of the data, uh, do you know, or can you give me information about what are the industries that this is best working for in terms of enrichment, in terms of intent, in terms of the lookalike? Because obviously not all the industries have the equal amount of data available to them from all these sources, right?
Sure. I think we're in an interesting world these days where data decay is, of course, always going to be a thing. Data decay is where you buy a list, you acquire a list, you enrich a list, and then over the span of a day, a month, a year, people move on. They change phone numbers. People, they die.
Yeah.
It's a crazy world. But ultimately, I think we're in this really cool environment where everybody is, for lack of a better term, borrowing from everybody else. It's really interesting to see a lot of the tools that I used back in the day, whether it was Clearbits or I don't know, like LinkedIn Navigator was kind of like this fun tool to start
Yeah.
using at scale. Dun and Bradstreet, all of these tools are stealing from each other. And I think there's only so many ways to get first point of source data. And that's usually self-reported. So we're regularly crawling most of the LinkedIn data on a fairly regular schedule. We're talking, I can't give away timelines, but
Yeah.
a consistent schedule. And in terms of using other sources to either pair up or match data to make sure that either the individual users that we've scraped are still at the company, or the descriptions haven't changed, like all of those things are enriched on a consistent basis. It's not something you get when you buy a list, obviously.
Yeah.
So I think that's what you pay for.
So we have a question from Kevin here. Besides going to the website and search for testimonial case studies, are there any other successful strategies for figuring out competitor customers that you can share on top of your mind?
Sure. I mean, there's all kinds of different places where you can start to tease out these high intent things. I used to use Bright Data when I could afford it. It's like $1,500 a month. And that was really
Right.
good with social. Yeah, massively expensive. And that was social media data. And so I used to find really interesting ways of either scraping groups or crawling certain types of kind of messages that were when people were complaining or saying that they were really frustrated with a specific competitor of mine. At which case, that was like the most important thing to reach out and be like, hey, sorry, you had a really bad experience with the person I hate anyways. Why don't we have a call and I can show you how great we are? And that
Yeah.
actually makes for a really interesting, introduction.
One last question from Paris here, and then moving on to our next guest. So, how are you managing businesses using the data without opt-ins, and just what's the relationship with the opt-ins, opt-outs that you guys have?
In terms of cold outbound, is that what we're asking about?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So GDPR is one of those things that I think everybody talks about, but very few people actually dig into it. The
Yeah.
reality is you cannot do a giant cold email blast to personal emails for a super generalized product like, hey, I got like these coffee mugs, you want to check one of those out, you have to have a rational reason for contacting them that is relevant more than just they're human and they breathe. You like, if, oh, you're a business that is in my industry, that is probably a use case for my product or service. Additionally, you have to have the ability to unsubscribe. You have to show your address in the footer. And yeah, I mean, those are kind of like the basic tenets. But to say that unless somebody subscribes, you are unable to contact them via a business email is just inherently not true.
Yes. Like everyone knows that you can find me probably at michael@belkins.io and then you at taylor.ocean.io. So it's like pretty straightforward, right? So Taylor, thank you so much for joining us. I'll see you in a few minutes during the roundtable, and I'm going to get you on the backstage. Thank you so much for the slides and for sharing. Guys, thank you. Thanks for Taylor as well in the chat, please. Thanks, man.
Thanks,
All right. Just kidding. Wow, that was great. My next colleague, David, is going to be here in a second, and we're going to be talking cold calling. David, hi.
Hey, Michael.
Hey, how are you?
I am good. Thanks for having me on. Thanks everyone for joining us today. This is a great event.
Absolutely, absolutely. We were all so excited to have you on and learn from you. I've posted many times on LinkedIn about learning from you about cold calling, because I hear from everywhere cold calling is back on the top of the outreach again 2024. People love that. They will see conversion. So but before I go ahead and we can chat about that, why don't you just introduce yourself, your company, what you guys do, and why you are talking about the cold calling.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. So I run SalesRoads. We are an SDR outsourcing, appointment setting, lead generation, and revenue development company. And so I started the company in 2007, before SDR was even a term. So things have changed a lot. And we cold called out of Reference USA, which I got from the Philadelphia Public Library, right? So things have changed a lot since I started SalesRoads, and we have really tried to keep up with the times, with the technology, the development, as well as some of the fundamentals, which we'll talk about today, which I'll be honest, have not changed, will never change, in my opinion. But that is what SalesRoads does, and why we really focus on cold calling and prospecting for our clients.
All right. So what you're gonna talk today, and I ask you specifically, David, please give me specifics, give me data, give me conversions, and what you, this is amazing. Like what are we looking at right now?
Yeah. So what I wanted to do, and appreciated, the context that you wanted me to start out with is, cold calling in selling is a human sport, even in the age of AI. And we'll talk about that a little bit in the next slide. But it boils down also to metrics and a very simple formula, which I think everybody kind of intuitively knows, but I don't think everyone, both SDRs, people who are doing the cold calling management, pay enough attention to and monitor each one of these key 5 metrics very closely, and then think strategically how to improve each one. And this is what we do for our clients. We look at these every single day, both from a macro level as to how we can, deploy better things for our team to be able to improve these metrics, as well as on a program by program basis. So I'll go through each one. It's going to be a little quick. We only have so much time, and I know we have one other slide, but I'm going to try to go in as best as possible. And people who have additional questions, need additional data, please, hit me up on LinkedIn. Happy to share more. But obviously, the raw input for cold calling is dials, right? We all know that. But I think it's really important to have a target for your team and for yourself. We target about 120 calls for a full-time SDR every single day. If you're on the low end of that and you're calling every day and you're just at 40, I would consider looking at some technology. There's some downsides to it. There's some positives. We can talk about that more in the Q&A. Or also thinking about what your team is doing. Are they researching too much? Do they not have the right motivation? Which we're going to talk about. That is a key driver. And so really, you got to look at those inputs, because it is a numbers game, right? It's hard to get people on the phone, hard to convert them, and you need to have enough raw inputs. The second thing to monitor is your dials to what we call RPC, right party contact. So how many dials, how efficient are you or your team at getting somebody on the phone? This is tough, right? And the range is way out there. So, I know we wanted to put metrics here, but it ranges anywhere from 7 dials to 75 plus, if we're really going after C-level. And I think it's really important to monitor that for yourself, benchmark. What are the titles you're going after? Certain titles are easier. I can, again, share that data if people hit me up more granularly, but it's a wide range, but you got to get your hands around that, know what good looks like. And then if you are not hitting good, right, you got to look at a few things. One, and Michael, you talked about this, and that data is so important. It's the bedrock of what we do. And if you're seeing a low convergence rate, you just might not have the right data. We invest in lots of different data sources. We waterfall them. There are great tools out there like phone ready leads where you can actually find out who's more likely to pick up the phone, right? So when you are looking at that, you got to see what is, whether you're on track, and then whether your team is doing the right things. There are also things that are tangential to it that actually have an effect on it. For instance, voicemails. A lot of people have given up on voicemails because nobody picks me up. Voicemails aren't necessarily for people to call you back with. Well, Orem, I think, did a study where people who leave voicemails saw a 1% increase in connect rates with that same person moving forward. Oh, wow. Right? And everything we do is on the margins, right? If you can just increase by 1% here, 5% there, right? That changes the calculation. So you got to look at the other things your teams are doing, whether it's voicemails, leveraging email, social channels, things like that are going to increase this metric. Third is appointment to right party contact. This is convergence rate. How well are you get someone on the phone? Are you converting? So on average, we see about 17%. These are cold leads. Top formers, no, everyone should be shooting for about a third. You should want to convert a third, which is not easy, right? Yeah, it is not easy. And there are a number of things you need to look at. And the first one that really impacts this is sometimes counterintuitive, but you brought it up already, Michael, and that is the right targeting. It's the right list, right? You can have the best team in the world. If you're not targeting in the right way to a relevant prospect, Ocean does a great job with that. Love the tool. There's lots of other things to make sure that you are targeting the right people. And that is going to increase your conversion rate, your team's conversion rate. Obviously, and we're going to go into some of this, opener, objection handling, tone is super important. So monitor this. And if you're not where you think you should be, if you're not at 17%, you've got to tweak some of these things. And I would urge you to shoot for 33%.
Interesting. Top performers are at 33% conversion, which is twice more. So investing into a top performer, paying extra markup 20% or not, or hiring the best people on the job would basically double your conversion, or reduce your spend at double, right? Based on these metrics. Wow, it's amazing.
And I'll put the caveat, not the caveat, because I 100% agree with that. And but there's two aspects to it. You got to have great people. This is the people business, right? We are people selling to people. So you got to have great SDRs and great training. Also invest in the data, though. Invest in sometimes people look at the right data to make sure they've got cell phones and connections, and that's important, but also making sure you have the tools, whether it's Clay or Ocean or other ways, to be able to target in the right way, not just based upon industry and other things, but on relevance. That is going to change this metric substantially as well.
Wow. All right, let's go on to other metrics, David, here, and then move on to juicy 10 things to keep in mind when doing cold calling 2024.
So held. So sometimes we think we've got to just book the appointment, but it is the helds that is going to make the difference, right? And so you should be looking at 90%. Our goal for our team is 90%. And by the way, can you see me? Did I just lose camera? Am I?
Yeah, you lose camera for a second here. Can
you? I'll stop the camera and then.
Yeah. I think you should.
Wow, that's great.
You know what? I'll just gonna put it on. I'm gonna just put on the big screen here.
Perfect. I'm I don't know. I'm an AI, I guess. Here we go. So, all right. So do you want to go to the? Just show the slide.
Yeah. Sorry about that. All right. Yeah, here you go.
All right, so held rate. So we shoot for 90% held rate. If you are below 80%, you've got a bit of an issue. You got to work on it. And what I would monitor is, for this is making sure you're building, value on the call. If held rate, if you're not building value, if person doesn't want the appointment, right, it's not going to help. And then the follow-up process is super key.
Yeah.
And then lastly, and I put this on the cold calling slide, but it's super important. You got to manage closing rate. If your reps aren't closing the appointments you're setting at a high enough rate, you're not only, there's parts of the discovery process that you need to be able to optimize, but it's also sometimes the appointments we're setting. You got to make sure you're targeting in the right way, you're building that value, and you're handing off in the right way. And then lastly, it all ends with revenue. And so optimizing this equation based upon revenue, and making sure that things are closing and targeting the right people, that is key. Dave, RPC stands for right party contact. So that's a persona that you're actually targeting, not just somebody who isn't somebody that you want to go after.
Dude, I love the metrics that you're looking at. I love the benchmarks and conversions, and also what you put here, what to monitor when you're working on that specific metric. Love that. And I'll be sure that everyone who registered for this event would have access to this list. We'll email you guys. So yeah, if you didn't register, go ahead to Future of Outbound and just register it and subscribe, and we'll email you the link with the data from David. All right, and then top things to keep in mind when cold calling to drive revenue. Some of those items that I see on the list, I was surprised. I was like, oh, really? So talk to us about this, David.
Yeah. So I start, people might think this is cheesy, but I just think it is the most important thing for yourself, and especially for managers to think about. And your mood is going to dictate your success. You've got to make sure that when you're showing up in the day for a session of cold calling, that you are in the right mindset. We've all been there. It's not easy. It's not easy to do it for a full day, to get the nose. So you've got to make sure that you are starting with the right type of mindset. One of our core values at SalesRoads is attitude is everything, because we found that the best SDRs are not even the ones that are the best at engaging people on the phone, asking questions. It's those who are consistently motivated throughout the day. And I would say to managers, a lot of times we think that we've got to coach calls, we've got to show different tactics and things like that. Your number one responsibility is to make sure your team is motivated, happy. So if there are things that are frustrating them, work on those with senior management, get them the tools they need, the list they need. You've got to make sure that your team is in the right mindset for success. Second, I have to touch on AI. AI can do everything for you, and that's a little facetious, right? But I want to mention that it cannot sell for us. I can't tell you how many times it's been AI, it's been other things where people want that silver, that little button that they can press and sales are going to magically come out of the sky. It is not going to happen, especially now. I mean, who knows what's going to happen in 5 to 10 years? But I'm a little hesitant. But that's a debate for another time. But lean into your humanity when you are selling, but leverage AI for everything else you can, whether it's researching your personas, your ICP. If you get an objection you weren't sure about, leverage ChatGPT to brainstorm with it around that persona. For your follow-up emails or your prospect emails, use AI. You should have that open every single day. But don't make the mistake that that's just the silver bullet. It is just going to help you have some superpowers.
We have 2 minutes for the list, David.
Oh my gosh! Okay, should I just run through them okay. So activity trumps perfection. I will go super fast here as much as I can. Instead of being, get action, get out there, try your pitch, get on the call. There's always one more thing to research, but I always lean on activity versus perfection. Be hyper targeted to be hyper relevant. There is just no excuse to call just general leads now. You can use tools to figure out, who is hiring SDRs, who has different issues with the way that their technology might be set up on their emailing. You can research these things, build a list, and then reach out to them in a way that you are hyper relevant to them, both in the way that you approach that call, but also the way that they're more receptive.
Yeah.
You also want to leverage that information to front load your questions with context. So quick example, here, we build lists for companies that are hiring SDRs, but don't necessarily have a sales leader or somebody who's running the SDR team. We can scrape all that information, and then we want to ask a question in the call that explains that we know that that's something that they're doing. And then, they understand that we understand the context. You have a short amount of time, just like in this presentation, to be able to make to make an impact and whatnot. So I'll quickly run through the rest of them because I know we're out of time. But use permission openers, but then slow the beep down. You got to be slow and deliberate in the way that you present things, so that people lean in versus you just rushing through things. How you say something is more important than what you say. So really think about your tone, the pauses that you make, listen to your calls, be memorable, have stories in your back pocket about some of the best customers you've helped by persona. That's the way to break through, that people will remember you, remember the call, remember the appointment. And success hinges on your actions post-appointment, not just the call itself. Really optimize that post-appointment handoff to the AE, the email that you write after the appointment that highlights the things that you guys discussed, and then make sure that you've got a good cadence for reminders. And then lastly, so obvious, but
I love the last one.
we're not in the appointment setting business if we're SDRs or running SDRs teams. We are in the revenue generation business. And the meaning that we get every day is generating revenue for our clients. And you've got to optimize around that. You can celebrate the mini wins, the appointments, the holds, but you got to optimize around revenue.
I love it. I love the list, David. All right, I'm going to just put it on. We have some questions from the audience. But like just on the tone of what you just mentioned, especially in the last few points, like what are you looking when you hire callers? Like obviously personality wise or generally, what are the people that are like very good at calling? Are there any criteria that you can speak about right now?
Yeah. So the first, and it goes back to our first one, is motivation. Are they motivated? And so at SalesRoads, we hire a lot of people who've been in the industry for a while, not necessarily the standard way that the people hire SDRs out of college. We like it when people have been in this industry for a while. They know it. We can ask them questions about some of the difficulties they've had, how they motivate themselves on a daily basis. That is the number one thing that we prioritize. And then secondly is just the presence, the presence that they have. We do a lot of role play when we're hiring. It's a great job because to hire for, because you can actually interview them. We give people packets. They need to study a client. We role play with them. We can see them in action.
Matt here asks, what are the great phone-ready B2B lead sources aside from ZoomInfo that you guys have been using so far that worked for you very well?
Yeah, so we do use ZoomInfo. We also waterfall that with SalesInfo. We also use Clay a lot and some of their built-in, enhancements for mobile numbers, emails. We've actually found that that's pretty great to waterfall with. One of the things I mentioned, phone-ready leads. If you have a big enough TAM or you don't have so much time, that's a great way to figure out which leads actually will potentially or have a higher propensity to pick up the phone. So those are just a few sources that we leverage.
Paris here asks, when you're calling or more successfully calling, is it you guys mostly call small businesses, mid-size, enterprise? What type of segment you would say these conversions are representational mostly?
Yeah, so it is all of it, and that's why I was a little. I know you asked for some metrics, so I tried to give general metrics as much as I could. Our clients have us prospect into all. So happy to go over some metrics if you hit me up offline, because you're right. It changes by segment, but also really by persona and level a lot.
Got it. And then we have one last question from Antonius, and I'll let you go, David. Have you measured an optimal percentage listening versus talking of top performer callers? This one is interesting.
Yeah, this is interesting. So I've looked at some studies. We haven't personally measured it, and it was kind of surprising. So the study, I can't remember who published it. It might have been Gong. Actually said that top performers talk 55% more than they listen, right? And it's kind of crazy. And I'm a bit. It's gotten us thinking, but it is true. When you think about a cold call, you're working a little harder. In discovery, that is flipped, right? You've got to listen, you've got to ask the right type of questions. But we're really fighting for that opportunity to give, ask a few questions, but give some value in a short period of time. So the data shows that you actually talk a little bit more than you listen in a cold call.
Love it, David. It's been only 15 minutes, but we learned so much. We learned the metrics, we learned what to monitor, what to look at, we learned how to be set up for success in 24-hour calling, we learned about the game. Thank you so much, David, for coming in and sharing. I will see you in a few minutes on that roundtable discussion. And I'm going to just
might. I'll see if I can fix my camera, but I'm waving to everybody. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Thanks, Michael, for having me.
Thank you so much, David. I'm just going to put on there here. Wow, that's a lot. All right, I wanted to bring on my next guest speaker, colleague, a friend, and his name is Ilya, and he's from this company, Expanded.io.
Ilya, hey, yo.
Hey, how are you, man?
Yeah, I'm fine. Super excited. Thanks a lot for having me today.
Absolutely. We've spoke about leads, we've spoke about calling, but we all know that you cannot win the game without LinkedIn, without social. And this is what you're going to talk about to us today, right?
Yes.
So for those who hear about Expanded.io for the first time, can you introduce yourself, your company, what you guys do?
Yes, my name is Ilya, and I'm from Expandi, and we are building the LinkedIn automation software for sales teams and lead generation agencies. And we just enable you with a really amazing software, predictable and advanced.
Love it. Ilya, I know that you prepared a lot of really cool metrics and insights about LinkedIn for people who registered and joined. So I don't want to take people's time. And I know that because you're so good at what you are doing, there will be a bunch of questions in the chat. So what I'll do, I'll just go ahead and write into the LinkedIn game. So Ilya, talk to me what we see here on the screen.
Yes. Okay. So let's be frankly honest. LinkedIn is being changed. I mean, it's always changing, right? All outbound it's not the same as it was 10 years ago, and the same happens with LinkedIn. I mean, we all know that back in days, LinkedIn was full of spam. A lot of people just reached out to you, say, "Hey, Michael, let me sell you something," and you said no. that happened even a few years ago, and 5 years ago. After that, LinkedIn started changing and started implementing more and more limitations and so on and so forth. And in 2024, we have the platform, the #1 B2B social media platform with tons of data, with tons of potential leads. But at the same time, you're limited right now with the amount of messages that you can send. And you can say to me, "Hey, Ilya, whoa, how to be on LinkedIn? If you're limited with the amount of messages you can send, now I cannot send thousands. I cannot send millions of messages. What should I do here?" And in reality, you're not alone. Literally everyone is limited with the amount of messages you can send on this platform. But in reality, what you can do, and what I will talk today about, it will be how can you get the maximum out of each message you send. That's the first one. And the second one is, how you can increase a little bit the amount of messages that you can send. So here is a quick overview, and a bit more, we'll dive deeper on the next slide. So first of all, the new limitations. And new limits, it's pretty hard to say what is your specific limit for your specific LinkedIn account, right? But in reality, you can send from 100 to 300 connection requests per week. Is it a lot? No, it's not. And you need to understand that probably LinkedIn as a channel might not be for you if you cannot get leads and generate leads that with a nice deal size, the average deal size on LinkedIn. If not, it's not your channel. It's all good. But if yes, if your average deal size is pretty huge enough, then LinkedIn is the best channel for you, or one of the best. So let's go quick overview. The first question that we're going to talk today is about new limits and new limitation, how to work with that. And on the next slides, it will be a few growth hacks that you can implement in order to just send more messages. The second one, how to get better results, right? So for example, and that shows like the statistics, and my personal campaign shows that if you go on someone's LinkedIn profile and like their posts, visit their profile, and endorse their skills before you actually send the message, you're just getting better results. That's just one of the examples. The next one, it's about personalization. All outbound is about being relevant. That's definitely true. But in reality, the question is not why you need personalization, but how to actually implement the personalization and the right level of personalization. Not too much and not enough, to actually convert people on LinkedIn. And we're going to talk about this. And the last thing is about how to become a healthy LinkedIn user and not a spammer, and what are the indicators of that, so you can send more messages constantly and literally generate leads on LinkedIn forever. So I guess that we need to switch to the next slide, where I do want to dive deeper into each of these points.
10 things to keep in mind for LinkedIn outreach. This is juicy, Ilya. We have probably like 8 minutes, so almost a minute for the point. So let's go. I love a lot of those things on the list.
Let's go. I'm starting. So the first one, you always need to be really be careful with choosing the tool, because there are several types of the LinkedIn automation tools, right? So first of all, is Chrome extensions that take your cookie, and for LinkedIn, it's fighting against this type of automation. You might lose your account, or temporarily lose your account, or just be blocked because of this reason. So don't try to, you can use this, but be careful with that. Second one, it's a cloud-based solutions, and in reality, it shows that it's much safer and reliable in terms of the LinkedIn automation, LinkedIn outreach overall. The second one, so for example, how it works. Basically, cloud-based solutions work in this way. Imagine that we set up a virtual computer somewhere in your location. For example, if you're working, for example, in Germany, like the virtual computer in Germany, and you log into your LinkedIn account from that computer, and like we are doing some actions on your behalf. So for LinkedIn, it totally looks like someone, like a virtual assistant, sitting next to you in your office and doing some actions on your behalf. It's much more reliable.
Yeah, because a lot of people that I know, and me personally, I was so frustrated about the fact that I could be blocked, but not knowing this, and then knowing, and again, and be a customer of Expand and a partner, of course, I know that there's no way I can be restricted from LinkedIn, and this is like one of those things, right? That you guys are using a cookie and based on the location, not right, and that kind of helps with LinkedIn. So
yes,
that's cool to know.
You still can be blocked if you act like a spammer, but if you're not a spammer, definitely your chances are much lower. So
what is the mobile connector here?
Yes, the thing is that we thought, what if we set up not a virtual computer, but a virtual mobile device, and let you log into this, like to your LinkedIn account through that mobile device? Will it increase the LinkedIn limits? Basically, yes. You can increase your limitations with this type of the connection to your LinkedIn account by several times. I mean,
so that's why you can do like up to 300 connection requests, not 100 that it usually is done, right?
Yes.
Because through this feature. Cool.
Yes. The third thing is that, and that's if like we don't have enough time, but actually, people, if you have any more questions, you can ask me right now. You can reach out to me after. I'll be happy to explain everything. So the third thing is that basically, whenever it comes to personalization, definitely LinkedIn Sales Navigator is a pretty great source of finding potential leads and reaching out to them and find the most relevant people. But in reality, it's much better to go and try to enrich your list of potential leads, of contacts with some external data. For example, by using, for example, Clay or some other tools like Ocean.io or some other tools, depends on your on the tools that you like. You can find, like, you have a list of companies, you have a list of people you want to reach out to, and let's try to reach out to only those who are hiring right now. For example,
Yeah.
you're an SEO agency and you want to reach out to startups. And of course, it's much better to reach out to startups who are hiring right now for the SEO specialists remotely. That means that they already need the SEO, like specialists and SEO work, and you can, be extremely relevant to them. And that's one of the ways to reach out with some external data enrichment, for example, like Clay. The next thing is the fourth rule or growth hack. It's whenever you want to reach out to someone, it's always much better to go on their profile, like their recent posts about a specific topic, or just
Mhm.
their post, visit their profile,
Love
endorse
that.
their skill. So at the end, they will see your face always popping up in their notifications. And whenever you reach out to them and say, hey, I wanted to reach out to you, let's connect, or something like this,
Yeah.
they will have something in mind, something like, hey, I saw this person somewhere, because your face is always popping up
Yeah.
in their notifications for the last 3 or 4 days. It's usually
You know,
increasing by, yeah.
You know what I'm doing? I have two campaigns. The first one is called like Builder, right? When I'm like have this audience, and what I'm doing is just I'm basically visiting their pages, liking their posts, just showing up, like, and doing a bunch of things, but I'm not connecting. I'm sort of like, dragging it, nurturing, like dating type of situation, right? And then I have another campaign that is like connector type. So what I'm doing once the audience is warmed up, when they went through this sequence, then I'm moving them to the connector campaign. So in this way, I can do both the sort of like the dating part and the marrying part at the same time. And that got me to something like even the cold audience with my profile with SSI of something 76 or 77 I have something like 40% connection rate, 40% in connected, and then about 20% replied. And I love that. And it just helps to kind of build up the audience much faster. So I love that point.
Yes, definitely true. Then we don't have enough time, so I'll try to go
Yes,
quicker.
quickly.
So
Yeah.
about the personalization, so we all know that you can personalize your text, right? Say, hey, I saw that you recently changed your job, that's why I decided to reach out to you, blah blah blah. But what else, and like what else is working is actually whenever you create videos for literally every single person, just open Loom and record the video with their website, just saying, hey, I was at your website, I thought that there is a fit between what we do and what you do and what you probably need, and so on and so forth. But in reality, it takes too much time. So there are some tools on the market called SenseSpark or Response.ai, the tools that let you automate video personalization, and you can send all of those personalized videos on LinkedIn automatically. So how it works, on your background is the website is the company's website, and on the left side over here, like a Loom, it's your face, and your head is talking. And for every single contact, the background is being changed based on their website. So it's always eye-catching, and at the same time, it's pretty much converting much better, to be honest, in terms of replies.
All right, so the SSI here, I'll just quickly go through the list with you, Ilya, because I know that I'm sorry, this is the format. This is like a boiler room type of information for people. So SSI, I didn't know that if your SSI is growing, it's for those that don't know, it's a social selling index, and if it's growing, then you can actually get more connection requests. Is that the case?
Yeah, the thing is that you can just simply, whenever the SSI, it's the indicator on LinkedIn that shows you, okay, this user is not active. And if this user started reaching out to too many people, probably something weird is happening over here. But whenever your SSI is growing and you're optimizing your LinkedIn profile and you're interacting with different people start seeing your face literally everywhere. A, you can send more messages, and B, your acceptance rate is just growing much better. So in reality, the better SSI, the better results you can get on LinkedIn. Yes.
Love it.
So
And then we will email this list to everyone who registered. So please make sure that you have a link in the chat. Register at Belkins.io, Future of Outbound, and then you'll have the list from Ilya. All right. 2 more points, Ilya, and then let's move on to answer 2 questions. All right. So I love the number 9, number 8 and number 9. Can you talk about the number 8 and number 9 then? Super
yeah,
interesting.
yes, in reality, if you are trying to chase a specific vertical, for example, startups who raised money or a specific, really specific niche of companies and people, try to adapt your LinkedIn profile to this specific audience for the next months. So for example, for the next months, you want to reach out to only SEO agencies, right? That's just a stupid example, but you understand it. Just say you help specifically SEO agencies. Yeah, in this case, your acceptance rate will be higher. People will see that, okay, you're extremely relevant to them. And then whenever you change and trying to reach out to another audience, adapt your LinkedIn profile again and again and again.
Love that. Especially in sales, right? When you can connect and you have a lot of appointments with this ICP or with these buyers, and just adapting to them is insane. All right, and then number 9 here.
Yes, so that's a pretty broad topic, but LinkedIn is not only about reaching out on and connecting with people. It's also an amazing platform to share content. And if you follow the right techniques on how to create the right content on LinkedIn, some of your posts might go viral. And in reality, if your post is going viral, tons of people who are not connected with you right now will like and engage with your posts. So the best thing that you can do is scrape literally every single person who liked or commented on your post and try to reach out to those people. In a better case scenario, you can even find only those people who liked your post and fit your ICP, and reach out to them and say, hey, I saw that you engaged with my content on LinkedIn. I saw that I took a look at your profile. Probably there is a match in what we do. Let's talk. So it's really amazing source as well.
Love that. Let's quickly move on to questions and just put on, there are some things, like 2 questions here. So first from Dave, how many endorsements do you recommend? Their top 3?
How many endorsements do you recommend? Yes, just endorse their top 3 endorsements. That's more than enough. Because in reality, people just need to see your face in their notifications. But they see all the notifications. Someone like my
So AJ here asks, is this only for teams, or do you work with individuals? I think it's about your platform.
Yes, we work both with teams and with individuals and with lead generation agencies. So basically, we have like different functionality for different type of accounts. Overall, the platform is pretty great for literally everyone.
And then just to answer Alejandro's question here, what's the mobile connector?
That's the way for you to simply send more connection requests on LinkedIn in a safer mode. Technical details I will not share like right now because we don't have time. But in reality, just believe me, you can send it.
I love this, Ilya. I know you do a bunch of really cool webinars regularly. So guys, if you want to learn more about all this nitty-gritty things about LinkedIn, go ahead and check out what the webinars Expanded Team and Ilya are doing. Ilya, thank you so much for coming in and sharing. I'll see you on the roundtable in a minute. Okay. Thank you so much. All right.
Bye.
Wow. I think for the next year, I need to plan 15 minutes per speaker. But as you saw, guys, I just wanted this to keep going, keep rocking. I have another speaker. We are running up something like 9 minutes behind the schedule, but I'll make it up on the roundtable probably. But we're not going to stay longer. All right. So my next speaker is the colleague of mine, actually. I've been working with this guy for 2 or 3 years almost, and he's one of the best salespeople and professionals that I ever had the pleasure working with, Mr. Brian Hicks. Hi, Brian. Hey, I cannot hear you though. Let's see here if we can. Guys, in the chat, no. I cannot hear you. All right, so guys, hope you have fun here. Oh, here you go.
Sorry about that. Technology is great.
You're good. Hey, how are you, man?
Good. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm great. I gave you a sweet intro. I'm not sure if you heard me or not, but I told everyone that you're one of the best professionals I ever worked with. Are you blushing right now or no? No?
I
You
appreciate
are.
that.
See you.
Absolutely. No, yeah, when I first came on, you guys might not have heard me, but I said, "Hey, boss, how's it going?" Yeah, Michael and I have had the pleasure of working together for 3 years. I'm proudly a member of the growth team here at Belkins. Actually, I just closed my 203rd client for Belkins in the beginning of this week. I
Oh,
crossed over
wow.
the 200 mark, and so everybody be happy for me. Celebrate your wins,
Congratulations.
and thank you so much. Um,
We don't have a lot
so
of time, Brian, so I'll just dive into that. What you're gonna talk with us today? We are probably gonna have like 10 minutes for your slides. So what are we looking at right now?
Okay, yeah. So to give everybody a little context, if you don't already know, Belkins is a top of funnel pipeline development agency that was founded in 2017. Our core competency and area of expertise is focused around email. We are currently sending out about 1.5 million cold prospecting messages every single month on behalf of our clients. So I'm going to dive into how the email game has kind of evolved. On this slide, we're going to talk a little bit about it, and then I'll go into some predictions and some tips next slide. But what we found is that on average, about every 306 cold prospecting messages that you send, you drive one qualified B2B lead. The appointment to close ratio on average, when looking at all of the clients that we work with, sits right around 5 to 7% of appointments driven are closed. We've noticed a decline in that percentage. So what we found is post-recession, people are clutching their wallets a little bit
Yeah.
tighter. And so that kind of means that we have to be more thoughtful. We have to be more strategic during our sales journey. But it's just food for thought for everyone on the call. If you're closing above this, then get yourself a drink tonight when you get off work, because you're doing a great job. Conversions from lead to appointment reached about 0.8%, which is really fair. So again, if your BDR team is working their ass off and you're like, we're only converting 1.2% of our appointments, of our leads to appointments, hey, that's above average. That's great. So be proud of them. Average cost per appointment from cold emails sits right around $770. And I'm going to go into that on this next slide, and we'll dive into it a little bit deeper. But that just gives you a little bit of insight. Keep in mind, the average is just that. It's an average. If you're prospecting into schools and churches,
Yeah.
your cost of acquisition is going to be much less than that. If your target prospect is the VP at Amazon and Walt Disney, your cost is going to be much more than that. We found that the one BDR, when focusing on enterprise accounts, 5 appointments delivered in a month is great. Focusing on midsize, 10 meetings a month is also a great average metric. And then focused on SMBs, 20 to 25 meetings is a realistic expectation for them when it comes to delivering meetings for your sales team. On average for Belkins, we found our sales cycle sits around 40 to 45 days. Now, again, depending on your industry, if you're here from the SaaS industry, your sales cycle might be 3 months. It might be 6 months. It depends on how complex your solution is. So this is just data that we found within our own team and with our own process.
All right, I'll just move on to the next slide. Wow, what is this?
Yeah, so this is average cost per appointment based on industry.
Nice.
And then, so it's segmented on industries on the left. And then it's the key on the far right outlines startups, SMBs, and enterprises. So you'll see the kind of the average cost of acquisition for SMBs is highlighted in orange in the middle. So, if you're listening to this, find your industry. If you know the numbers, then compare your numbers to these, because this is what we're finding. Again, I've seen the cost of acquisition be as low as $220 if you're targeting churches. So if you can find a way to get religious institutions in your ICP, do
Right.
it. But then I've also seen it go up as high as $2,500 or $3,000 per appointment, depending on who you're targeting. This is just insight to hopefully confirm what you're already finding. If you're finding that your cost of acquisition is way out of whack compared to this, something needs to be adjusted. Something needs to be changed.
Yeah. And you have this QR code here that you can scan, and then you can get to the same list, and you can just look at it at home. And by the way, for those who just joined, if you didn't register at Belkins.io Future of Outbound website in the chat, go ahead, do that, and we'll email you the list. We'll email you the deck and the recording for this event. All right. So, lesson learned from cold emails to apply in 2024. Hit us up, Brian.
So one of the reasons that I love email, just to back up a little bit, is I cut my teeth on 100 to 150 dials a day doing prospecting, and I was reaching out internationally. And when I started leveraging email, I realized that my phone bill didn't go up as high because I didn't have to call international numbers. And now I know we've solved that problem, but also I could land that message in front of everyone that I was reaching out to. So it enabled me to do a lot of international outreach. Spam the chat with where you're joining this meeting from. So just let us know what country, what state you're from. It'd be interesting just to see that. But I learned that everyone, by and large, every professional uses their email. They clear their inbox by the end of the day in most cases. Now, over the past few years, email has gotten more sophisticated, and I see that, Cassie, you made a point about this, and it's something that I'm going to talk about. But I'm going to go through this list, and I'm going to try to do it expediently, just because I know we're kind of pressed for time. Reach out to more people per business. Don't focus on one, but we found a sweet spot of 2 to 4 prospects per organization gives an average highest open rate, reply rate. I'll talk to you about why I just corrected myself on saying open rate, because open rates aren't so great anymore. Avoid reaching out to more than 3 people with the same domain at the same time. Well, Brian, you just told me 2 to 4 is the number. Why? No, listen to me, class. Don't reach out to more than 3 at the same time. If you've got 5 titles you want to go after, great. Don't ping them all at the same exact time. It's a flag for your spam filters. They see you doing a mass amount of outreach into the same domain. They start flagging those messages, sending them into the junk box. Space them out a little bit. Short and sweet is key. I love what David said about calling. I kind of use the same approach when it comes to email. Keep your emails concise. Don't do a lot of fluff. 1,000 characters or less. And a new thing, well, not, I would say new, but I learned this past year: ditch bold and colored fonts. I was living under a rock thinking, no more pictures, no more GIFs, no more links. Now the prospecting landscape is ever evolving. Server filtration is more sophisticated now than it's ever been, and it's even looking for bold or colored fonts. Everything that we would use to get someone's attention is what will land your message in spam. So you've got to be extremely crafty. One call to action, one link. Don't confuse your prospects. If you're going to go in with a relationship opener approach and try to build a conversation with them, great. Right. Leave the question there. Don't follow that up with, let's set up a meeting. Let's set up a demo. If you're going to go in with a call to action to set up a specific sales call based on a pain and a solution, leave it at that. Keep your messaging extremely succinct. Send cold emails to business accounts using the same email service provider. ESP stands for email service provider. So Gmail to Gmail, you're going to land more messages in your inbox. Outlook to Outlook, it's the same. Brian, how the hell do I know what ESP my prospects are using? That's a great question. I'm glad you asked that. There are tools. MailCharts is a tool, mxtoolbox.com. There are tools you can use to copy your prospect's email address and then find out what ESP that they're using to try to make sure that your outbound is more aligned.
Love it. Love it. Brian, we're pressing on time. 2 your favorite points that are left for the people, like out of the 5 that we didn't speak about. Because we're going to email the entire list of the people, so they will check it out.
I would say the first one is ignore open rates. Everybody's going to go, no, listen, ignore open rates. Open rates don't matter like they used to. They used to matter because filtration wasn't as sophisticated. Now, your receiving domain can have a scanning system that scans that message for any threats, and that naturally opens the message and counts as it open. And you think, oh, my open rate's 70%. Listen, focus on reply rates. Reply rates tell you if your message was seen and if it was relevant. Update your email templates and sequences once in 2 weeks. I think this is a big thing. If you're doing prospecting and you're sending out plain text email in an HTML format, for instance, because you want to have a tracking pixel, those formats need to be updated, and you need to use spam checkers because there are new words that are updated within the spam filters that are going to flag your message as spam. Let's set up a call. You might think it's just natural, but it'll flag that message in spam. If you're going to do HTML with a tracking pixel, build that template in plain text with your ESP as well. Build the template in plain text with your ESP because spammers don't do that, and that's what they're looking for when flagging messages. Thank you so much for the time.
Before you go, love this. So many great points, Brian. I have a question from Casey here. We need to answer it. Casey asks, how can cold email remain effective with millions of sends happening? Hit us with on top of your mind,
Yeah, so there are a million sends, but you have to bank on the fact that 50% of those sends are going into the junk box, the promotions box, or the sales box. They're never seeing those. I look at my inbox now and I see messages, and then I look at my junk box and it just gets riddled with messages. So that's the first thing. Make sure your email addresses are warmed up. Make sure that you have deliverability. Make sure that you have an assistant that can help land those messages in your inbox. That's half the battle. The other half the battle, subject lines. Use their name. Use their name in the subject line. Make it short and sweet and relevant. Pique their curiosity, and then your message has to be relevant for them. If you reach out with some general value proposition, they're not going to care. But trust me when I say that I get 20 messages a day that are prospecting. I look at every one of them. I read the ones that have good subject lines, and I respond to the ones that have relevant content.
Love this. So great. Thank you so much, Brian. We'll email all the slides that you've showed to the folks. It's been so great. Thank you so much for coming in, Brian. This has been amazing. Guys, if you have any other questions, put them in the chat. We're going to go back during the round table and maybe going to handle those. Okay. All right. So Brian, great to have you on, man. All right. Take care.
My pleasure.
Putting you on the backstage. Thank you so much. All right. Well, let's move on. We are 7-8 minutes late for the roundtable, but we're keep on going, keep on rocking. So my next guest, Joey Williams. Let me put on Joe here. Hey, Joey. Hey, man. How are you?
I'm doing good slide today. So be the person that too.
Hey, Joey, I think you have a robot sound or something like a robot type of sound. Can you double check your sound settings real quick? Just making sure that. No. This is what, again, this is happening.
Yeah, this is happening.
Maybe this is the platform.
This is the thing.
Huh.
How about now?
All right, so let's see. Joe, can you say something one more time? Yeah. Sorry, guys, for the. Yeah, I can hear you. This is because of AirPods. Marina is saying. Ah, those AirPods. That.
Do I still like a robot?
I think we have some kind of delay. Maybe you can either reconnect real quick or just change the settings. Maybe it's gonna help. While yeah, it's like an AI. Yeah, it's very similar to AI. I agree with you. That sometimes it happens. Let's wait for Joey to. Hey guys, if you stay with us 5 minutes late, it's fine. You see, there's a ton of value here. So while we are waiting for Joey to come back to us. I think I had a question from Tyler about the reply rate. So what should the reply rates be? So Tyler, for cold emailing, and I can speak to for Brian and for the Belkins team, you should be looking at about 10 to 15% reply rate on average. If you're below 5%, then it's not working for you. Hey Joey.
Hey, can you hear me?
Loud and clear, man.
All right.
Geez, sorry about that.
Hey, Joey, for those who don't know who Chili Piper is, can you introduce yourself, your company, and why we're talking about optimizing RevOps?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Joey Williams. I'm the Director of Sales Development at Chili Piper. We are an inbound conversion platform focused on converting leads into meetings.
Love it. And by the way, I brought on Joe and his team. We are the customers and the partners of Chili Piper, and we love the platform. And we're actually using to optimizing booking appointments for in the outbound as well, and making sure that that handoff process from the BDR or the SDR to an SC is as smooth as we can. All right. So Joey, what we're going to be talking today about?
Yeah. So others today have talked about the importance of focusing on actual revenue impact of SDR outreach. So that's a really important topic here. So we at Chili Piper, our SDR team hovers month over month around 50% of our new business revenue comes from our SDR team. So everything we do and all of what I'm talking about today as far as process optimization is focused on how to make sure we are working the right accounts that are most likely to convert into customers. So starting on the left of this slide here, I'm going to talk about where we started, how we figured out what a target account actually looks like for our SDRs. And then as we move to the right, talking about how we've automated the process of getting them the right account at the right time. So on the left, so talking about what makes the right target account. So starting off our SDR team, building it up from scratch, the first question you have to answer, one of the first questions you have to answer is what makes a good account? Not only based on firmographic and technographic data, but also how does an SDR find that account? How do they know to look for it every day? And then how do they message based on that? So making sure we build out a process for our SDRs, manually finding the right accounts, and for every single thing that they see that might make it a good fit account, what is the reason that makes it a good account? And then linking the messaging to that trigger. So for us specifically at Chili Piper, our legacy product Form Concierge, the use case for it is converting prospects from a request a demo form into a demo. So someone comes to a request a demo form or an inbound form and they want to meet with your team. We want to make sure they're able to leave your website with a meeting already scheduled if they're a qualified prospect for you. So for our SDRs, one of the most important things we look for is, does a company have a request a demo form on their site? Do they get a lot of traffic to that form? Does it look like they're investing in getting people there? Do they have ads that link to that form? So these are all things that at the beginning, we were manually checking to find the right accounts. Other good targets for us are, is their SDR team growing? Is their marketing team growing? Do they seem to be investing in converting more leads that come inbound for them? So that was the basic for us.
Sorry for not being here. Just take an example when you mentioned the booking link. I remember back in the day when people, and maybe if some of you guys listening to this, you still on your website have just an email or phone number, but you don't have a book a call link with the scheduling page. When we did that back in the day, our conversion was like 50% plus into meetings booked. Super important feature. And if you don't have that, and we actually use Chili Piper for that as well. So this is a very cool feature to optimize the journey for the customer. So just want to add that.
Thank you. Yeah, so as we're looking for that, we're doing it manually. Obviously, as you scale your team up, things like that start to waste a lot of time. Not only does it take time for your SDRs to find the right accounts, but you're also then relying on each individual's ability to target the right accounts for your team being able to convert at the level you need to be. So what we've done to automate this is utilizing our own routing software, which is called Distro, as well as a data provider called GoodFit. We've actually taken all of this information we need, automated finding that, and then sending the right account to the right time to the SDR. So an example of that is we can now, we've talked already in this session about web scrapers, search for request a demo form, inbound forms, and then with them, with tools like SEO Quake and putting that all through GoodFit, through Snowflake into our Salesforce instance, we can track over time changes to that. If someone just implemented a request to demo form, we can send that account to the right SDR. With our distro tool, they then get a notification in Slack and get told exactly why they got that account. So someone puts up a request to demo form, we're going to send it to an SDR, automatically tell them this is a new form. Or another example might be they double the traffic that they're getting to that website over a 3-month period. We're going to send that to an SDR and let them know they have increased traffic to this form, and most likely they need help converting those leads. Obviously, this is going to look different for every company, but the main impact here is that our SDRs aren't having to manually find these accounts, and we're giving the creative, smart people that we're hiring the best tools that they need to reach out to the right accounts with the right messaging.
I love this. This approach, or the way that you guys are doing this, can you share with us how did it increase or improve the conversion that you've had for your outreach? Do you have any numbers for us?
Yeah. So around the middle of last year is when we implemented the new data into Salesforce. Since then, and I mean, we're selling primarily to SaaS companies in the market over the last year. A lot of those companies' team size have decreased. So with that, you would expect pipeline per opportunity to decrease, as it's based on number of users we're going to see. Since the middle of last year when we implemented this, we've seen about a 30% increase in pipeline per opportunity just from sending the SDRs the right accounts at the right time. So that's been the primary impact. And then with our close rates staying steady from that, we've continued to increase our impact on the org.
Wow, that's a lot. And Joey, we talked today about LinkedIn, cold calling, cold emailing. You're managing the team of SDRs. Like, when you look at the ratio per channel, like, what's your take on that? What is the channel you're mostly focusing on, or you guys are doing multi-channel, or how does it in reality work for you with all the information we shared today for your team specifically?
Yeah, I mean, we always tell every rep that comes in here, you cannot succeed in this role without doing all three of those: LinkedIn, cold calling, and cold emailing. The reason we put so much focus into automating the account assignment and making sure they have the right tools of why that's a good account is that we want to leave it up to them to do what works best for them for the messaging. Every SDR I've seen, if someone finds messaging that works for them specifically, or a specific LinkedIn message or a specific cold call opener that works for them, when other SDRs try to copy that, it doesn't work. So the most important thing, and the reason we hire smart, creative people, is that we want to give them the freedom to then do the outreach that's going to work for them and be creative to stand out both from their peers at Chili Piper, but also stand out from the other 20, 30 SDRs that are reaching out to that prospect that day. So if somebody converts better on LinkedIn, they're going to be doing a higher ratio of LinkedIn compared to calls, but nobody succeeds here without doing all three of them.
Love it. Love it. And then you listen to all the previous speakers talking about the other channels. Do you think we missed something? Do you have any additional input for any channel we've spoke about today that you can contribute to just expand on any of the topics?
Yeah, I think one thing that sticks out about messaging, it's a little cliche, but relevance to your prospects. And that's, again, why the most important thing for us is getting them the right data at the right time so that they can then take that, be creative, and be relevant to what their prospects are experiencing. I get so many cold emails that start off with saying something like, "Hey, Joey, I see you're hiring SDRs." That, to me, speaks to the experience that SDR had, where they spent a long time finding that information, and they needed to put it right in front of me. They needed to tell me, like, "Hey, I learned this thing about you," versus when you give an SDR all the right information about their prospect, they're going to incorporate into that message in a way that actually speaks a little bit more to that prospect's language.
Yeah. I usually, the way I tell my guys is like, hey, try to read it out loud, and just, if it's cringy, if it's like, can you actually hear yourself when you read this, your prospect's voice, or it's just completely off.
And be empathetic, be human. Yeah. That's why we keep the messaging part of it up to the reps. Obviously we use cadences and SalesLoft and things like that, so it's partially automated, but we leave that up to the reps because they're the ones who are going to be the best at thinking, what is this prospect really experiencing with the topic that we're going to talk about? And, read it in their voice.
Love it so much, Joe. Thank you so much for coming in. We'll have a few slides for Amir, and then I will see you on the round table for some of the discussions, okay? Thank you so much, man, for sharing. It was so cool.
Thank you.
All right. Guys, we will have one last speaker joining us today, and then we are almost right in time, and then we'll move to the roundtable discussion with everyone. So you will be able to ask questions. So think of the question for every speaker or some groundbreaking, futuristic type of questions that you can ask for everyone, and I'll be happy to discuss that. So we'll be working with the chat. It's a live discussion. You have access to all these people. You can ask any questions. I'll be sure to answer to get those questions delivered to them, so then they can actually answer them. All right. So my next speaker, CEO of CloudTask, Amir Reiter, is going to join us in a second. So I just want to make sure that I can recap. So we've talked about list building and data generation. We've spoke about calling. We spoke about LinkedIn. We spoke about optimization. We spoke about emailing and calling game. And we generate all of those leads, but what's happening with those leads? Who are the people who are actually going to be driving those leads, closing them, driving the revenue? Because as David pointed out, it's about the revenue. We are not in the appointment setting game. We are in the revenue generation game. And there's no one better than Amir Reiter to coming in and talking about the selling, closing, and revenue generation. Amir.
Mike, what's up, man?
Hey, man. How are you?
Good. Good news. I'll be quick and get you caught up on time.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you hear the nice introduction I gave you that you're the best person to talk about the sellers and the closing and generally about the revenue generation?
I think that becomes true based on the marketplace because I know the best. So I think in order to be the best, you got to be the one knowing the best. But I appreciate you having me on. Quick high level. CloudTask is a RevOps marketplace, and that what we do is help hiring managers use the marketplace to quickly access comprehensive information about available remote revenue operation talent, whether it's remote reps, AEs, or whether it's amazing outsourced agencies like Belkins, all in one place so they can make informed buying decisions and not have buyer's remorse. So back to your statement, in order to be the best, you got to work with the best. And I'm very fortunate to run a marketplace where I can learn who the best are and help buyers find them transparent.
Love that. I know that one of the huge bottlenecks of the people even listening to this and generally running sales team is like how I can bring the seller who can actually close, especially when talking about the outbound appointments, because it's not a surprise for everyone, but closing outbound appointments is not easy. It's not, it's not the same as inbound, and it's a tough work. So I would love you to talk about what to expect in terms of the closing when we are speaking about the outbound, and then also like how to bring and what to consider in bringing the best sellers, and just generally getting your thoughts on the selling, hiring, and what are you looking personally into good sellers. And also because I know that hiring in the United States these days, especially in the SC's job, is super expensive, and I know you guys hire a lot in LATAM. I would love also you to talk about that. All right.
Yeah.
So let's dive just into the.
Yeah, 100%. So just talk about outbound, inbound. I think one of the big issues is that the revenue at the end is the same, but the buyer and their intent is not the same. And a lot of businesses that we worked with the years, I could name some, Nextiva, one of them. They would scale to 100 million in revenue through inbound, right? And inbound through SEO, blogs, people just basically finding them and signing up leads, right? And I think people need to remember that every industry is going to have different closing conversions. I think one of your teammates brought up the fact that churches have the lowest meetings, right? So it's not one size fits all, right? It varies between the POC, the cost of your product, and the industry. But on average, we've definitely seen that a 20% conversion rate for inbound leads is healthy. Now, there's no rule of thumb, right? But I like to put a 50% discount right on outbound. And I like to put that discount just because if you look at BANT's, budget authority timeline need, right? When you're calling someone an outbound, the need and the timeline, they're not there, right? Because if there was need and timeline, they would have come inbound. They would have Googled you, right? And they would have found you, right? So those two variables, they they're just not concrete. Now they could be. You could have someone you call, and all of a sudden they're like, I got a need for this now. My timeline is now. We don't really want to base scalability on luck, right? If that makes sense. So I put a 50% discount. If you're closing outbound deals at a 10% rate, that's what I would consider a good rate. Now, here is the tricky part. And this is a weird analogy, it just came into my mind. A butterfly goes from a caterpillar to a butterfly, and it does not go back from a butterfly to a caterpillar, right?
Right.
However, outbound can generate inbound, and it can turn into outbound, right? And what do I mean by that? I could cold call somebody today who just likes my call. He's like, Amir, you were to the point, crystal clear. I looked at your website. I just don't need your product, right?
Yeah.
Well, what happens if they hang up with me, but 2 years later, they come to someone's website and they fill out the form because now they had a problem and they remember that cold call, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird where outbound can become inbound, and it often does. And I think that we're going to live in a world where people are going to start realizing that. So this concept that, this is kind of where I get back to where people really, I believe, make mistakes by trying to measure everything at an inbound, outbound level versus just their monthly and revenue goal, right? Like if you know winning a game means you need to get 50 points, focus on that. Outbound generates inbound. Inbound can get ignited by outbound, right? And it's just becoming fluid, right? I think this is the only thing that is fluid. I think there's a lot of topics in America about things not being binary and going back and forth. I'm not going to get into that conversation, like, you know what I'm talking about. But I think that you actually have, where inbound can become outbound. So high level, keep it moving. Expect a 50% less conversion rate on outbound because they're just not going to have that intent. And then at the same time, this is an interesting thing, and I'm going to talk to you about just in the storytelling, right? So we have in our marketplace, obviously, a lot of different partners. We have partners that do paper meeting. We have ones that do managed teams, headcount, both, right? You guys, Belkins, I think, do managed teams and do paper meeting, which is a new offering, right? I've had customers where, they've been addicted to inbound, right? And then you start generating them meetings. And the meeting cost of one of these vendors that I think of was $200 per meeting, which is very low, right?
Yeah.
The account executives, what they say to management is these deals don't close. They're not as good as the other ones. And then the management cuts off that source. And I'm laughing because I'm like, why would it be, right? Like where was this expectation that a cold call or an email would be faster conversion? So they end up canceling the account executives end up complaining about the lead source. They lose that lead source and then they get fired because they didn't hit forecast. So they don't even realize that they're almost hurting themselves, right? So I think a lot of people need to start understanding that a apple's not a tomato and a tomato's not an apple, and that they're not meant to be the same. And if people will, lower their guard and start measuring the win at the end, I think we can stop calling things inbound and outbound and start talking about anything else you want me to get into? I'm trying to move faster, Mike. I know you're behind.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, we are good. I think we still have some time. Yeah. So, talking about average sales cycles, just generally, I love this point here about the fact that companies with products online might have a different sales cycle than those that sell services and vice versa and stuff, right? So, can you talk to this?
Yeah, it varies between a lot of your products, right? Like if you have a product like Growth where you're getting people to sign up for free, right? It technically can blind your sales cycle, right? Because all of a sudden now they might be considered a sale the second they sign up for free, and then it's your job from the CX team to grow that revenue channel, right? Like you said before, a product that with a lower cost is clearly going to have a faster sales cycle. An inbound lead where somebody SEOs you, Googles you, knows they have a problem, typically will have a faster sales cycle, right? If you're getting a DDoS attack and your website is down, you probably will close with Cloudflare in 1 day to get you back up, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, enterprise products, a lot of change management are going to take a long time. If you're trying to sell NetSuite, which is an ERP like Oracle, you might have to wait till a company goes IPO, right? And until they want to close on that. And they might be aware of you for 2 years until they go IPO. So yes, inbound sales cycles would be faster. Outbound sales cycles technically can be longer. It's not always a rule. There are exceptions. There are people that you can call outbound and close tomorrow, but that's not really where you should base your future on.
I am already start building with you guys and generally building a team in LATAM and bringing on people. And I love this few slides that you shared with the audience here about the different insights and different specifics of hiring folks in LATAM. Can you speak to what we see here on the screen?
I think we've hired 3 or 4 people. I'm not sure yet, but I see the chat going on. I'm happy to see that. But see, talking about Latin America, right? I think it's a twofold thing, right? I think people in Latin America are excited that they're getting jobs where they're making 100 to 200% more than they normally are. And I would imagine American U.S. reps, with the cost of living going high, might see this as a threat to them. But running cash flow negative companies is more of a threat, in my opinion. So, I think understanding labor laws is an interesting thing to talk about. And, I'm going to get right to the point. Labor laws in Latin America are meant to keep people behind. I said it again. Colombia, there are 21 Mondays that are holidays. They don't even know what the holidays are. And a lot of people don't have money for rent, and they're taking 21 holidays. So understand the labor laws, but also understand that you might not want to give them an employment contract. You might want to pay them as an independent contractor, same way a 1099 would be in the United States, because you could pay them more, they keep more of their money, and then you get around labor laws that are kind of meant to keep them back. It's kind of a weird statement. You can call me out on it. Anybody can QA me, but what we found is that in Latin America specifically, a lot of these labor laws are actually slowing innovation, and it's kind of a tricky one. So
yeah,
I recommend people hire people under independent contractor, pay them well, and avoid the labor laws because they're really not conducive to innovation, right? Obviously, the right tools, right, it is a big deal. There are talking about CloudTask. Obviously, we're a marketplace, right? You can find people and pay people for free. But there are obviously lots of other ways of recruiting people in different countries. You can put ads in LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, and then you could work with payment partners like OnTopDeal. There's so many of them, PayPal, right? So just make sure that you understand that payments are very important in Latin America. I think one of the big differences in Latin America versus the States is that in this, like I said, I like to just be direct and honest, right? You have a thing in America where a lot of people live at home with their parents until they're 40, and they can kind of live a little longer with cash. You have a situation in Latin America where 2 to 3 days delays in payments can really affect them. A lot of Latin Americans take care of their families, which is a cultural thing. So just making sure that if you're going to hire remotely in Latin America, that you understand any delays in payments, and that you can communicate this with people, so that if there's a Martin Luther King holiday on a Monday and there's 2 days delay in payment, that they just know in advance, right? And then also, if you're worried about activity levels, there are tools like Hubstaff that can record people's screens and activity levels, and keep people, active. So there are tools out there to ensure that you can do this right. The cool part is that any kind of tools that you would use to manage a remote team in the United States are the same as Latin America. So you don't have to use 2 different sets of tools, right? When it comes to language and communication skill, I definitely would recommend that you look for fluent English or professional English, especially for facing roles. And one of the other things that I would want to know is that just keep in mind that there's different cultures, right? I think in the United States, I used to work for NetSuite. I had an $85,000 base. I had $85,000 that plan. It was 50-50. That works in America. It does not work in Latin America. Latin America, they really are more focused on a base salary, not on commission. It's a cultural thing. And I think you just need to understand how that works. So keep in mind that the same commission might not be as enticing for Latin Americans as it would be Americans.
Would you say like 80-20, 80 base, 20 commission? Is that the right percentage?
I would. Yeah. I think that's the right mix.
Okay.
I would say that. Yes. Yeah.
What I look at, I love this one. And we're moving on to the roundtable. Tips to hire account executives and closers. I love each one of those points because it's not even necessarily just for the LATAM. Like if you're outsourcing, if you're like hiring remotely, it's everywhere, right? But not a lot of people realize it because only during the COVID, people moved from, all on site and moved to, okay, let's just do, partly remote, or just let's move fully remote. So what are we looking at here?
Yeah, listen, don't make the big logo mistake. I'm going to call out my good friend Andres Bloomer. He's actually somebody who's a mentor of mine, and he accomplishes a tremendous amount of things, so I can give him a little bit of a jab. I remember when he was working his company here in Latin America, and he had hired a chief revenue officer that used to work for SAP, right? And he was like he was like, the guy was like, he knows what he's doing. I was like, actually, no. I was like, SAP just sits there and get inbound leads. I was like, this guy has no idea how to create pipeline, no idea how to prospect. He fired him in 9 months and said, Amir, you were right. I really wish he'd just listened to me, right? But you are not SAP, you're not Oracle. You're not, do not think, it's actually the exact opposite, right? If you are a startup that is looking to, that builds pipeline with outbound, you should find someone who's got outbound, who worked for a startup that had outbound, because it's completely different skill sets. I used to work for NetSuite. I closed at NetSuite a $600,000 deal. Do you want to know what I did, Michael? Absolutely fucking nothing. I literally was a customer success rep. They were congratulating me. Amir, good job closing this deal. I was like, what are you talking about? Just answer the email and literally come back. NetSuite spends millions of dollars on educational. People buy it, right? So just understand that, try to look for people who have experience with companies that have similar needs as yours. It's a bad thing if they work for a bigger company, not a good thing, right? And then look for the SDR mentality, right? Like, this is an outbound event. We're talking about outbound, right? I remind you again about my Cloudflare example. If your website is down for DDoS attacks and they got you, they're going to come back to you, right? If you are an account executive that doesn't really follow up, doesn't hunt, you're not going to work. You'll be a good.
I think we lost Amir here for a second.
Really look for that has that SDR because they will need it. They're going to need the whole point of the conversion rate being 10%, right? That can go higher if you're persistent and you follow up. So really look for that. Yeah. And then obviously I mentioned the.
I love that.
It's just for truth, right? And look for follow up. Look, the big thing about interviewing people, and like I would say this, right? If you interview an account executive, you don't hear, you tell him like, hey, Michael, everything went well. We'll get back to you in 2 weeks, right? And that account executive, you don't hear from in 2 weeks, do not hire him.
Yes.
Look for an account executive that during those 2 weeks, he's sending you articles. I saw this. This is great. We can leverage this. We can use this to sell. When can I start? Do you think I can start earlier? Is there a way for me to start earlier without a base? I can just start working. That is the personality. If the guy is just waiting for you to send an offer letter, he's an inbound guy.
Yeah.
That's okay.
I love it. I had so many people that you had an interview with and reached out, follow up. They say, thank you for the time, the opportunity. They start sort of like engaging with you in a professional manner, nurturing relationship, although you don't give them answer. I love that. It shows the skill and it showed the grind and that you matter. That's not just the transaction, right? It's more. And I love that. I love that in SDRs. All right, Amir. What I'll do, I'll just bring on the other guys here, and then let's just dive into the roundtable. All right.
Cool.
All right. So let's see here. We have David. We have Brian. We have Ilya. All right. We have Joey, and then let's bring on Tyler here as well. All right, Taylor here as well. Awesome. All of us, right? I didn't. Oh, awesome. Well, listen, first off, tell me what you think about the format, honestly, because this is an experiment for me. I know you've been pressing time, pressing slides, but I think people more than 1 hour and a half, 2 hours, people won't consume any information. Like the last online event that was for 4 hours, people dropped all of them. So how is the format? What do we do next time? The same, or we should do longer or shorter, or less speakers? Who wants to be honest with me here? No one.
Well, maybe I'm too long-winded, but it was tough to get it all in 10 minutes. So either maybe just one slide or longer periods of time. But I felt like I was talking about how you need to slow down in your call approach, and I'm rushing through my presentation.
Yeah.
So.
No, you've been great. All right, so you will email me. I think you will email me the feedback with like, what the fuck was that? But yeah, I think like a lot of guys who would be looking for the recording, who registered and who just randomly would love to have all this packed information and to actually utilize it and not just kind of listen to 7 guys talking. But I actually, for this round table, I wanted to bring on actually 2 questions on here and then hear what you guys think. So first, This one is super important for me personally because I have the feeling that the role of the outbound sellers or just the SDRs in generally are like transforming in a way because we have a lot of AI, we have a lot of technology in place, we have a lot of channels. So can you speak to this? How is the role of an outbound seller going to change in 2024 or in the next 5 to 10 years? Is it going to be to change or it's going to be the same? Who has any thoughts on this? The role of the outbound seller, is it gonna? Yeah, go ahead. Just
I think it's going to change. I think everything's going to turn into customer success.
interesting. What do you mean? Can you expand?
Nope.
All right.
Cycle. I think it's all going to turn into. I think the.
Sorry, we lost you there for a second, Amir. Can you expand on what you mean about the customer success?
Yeah, I go back to like my role at NetSuite where I was called an account executive and I had a record deal, but all I did was answer a phone call. I think we're going to have B2B e-commerce is the future.
All right, we lost Amir there in a second. Taylor, you wanted to add something? I saw you.
Yeah. I can chip in.
Yeah.
I've been building a lot of automated systems for a number of years, and for those that have also worked with a lot of different APIs, whether it was formerly Integromat, now Make, or in the early days of kind of Phantom Buster or Texel, there's so many tools that allow you to essentially do the entire job without needing human intervention. And I absolutely agree that you have a bit more of a customer success type of role, which is in essence, everything is done automatically. And the only thing you have to do is not fuck up the exact moment when you go, all right, so can we sign something like we're good, right? That's essentially the role of sales as opposed to all of the other things that we're requiring people to think. Everything that used to be a decision tree that you could map out is now potentially an automated process, which is scary, interesting, and yeah, just the future.
Are we not like overcomplicating it in a way, like whatever tool I'm using, whatever builder or process I have, it's so many details, not to fuck something up, to be able for this to work. So are we looking at the position of like a RevOps, and then just the guys that are taking calls and just closing and having that negotiation part? So the two roles. So there's not going to be like an SDR, it's going to be just a RevOps, fully experienced in the automation and the gritty details, like the.
Yeah, RevOps is, I think, a different role. I mean, what we're describing is somebody that might have less than a week's worth of training, and ultimately those are human robots. So how long before we're able to create enough decision trees that allow for somebody to go through a interaction with a salesperson, whether it's via email or whether it's even through a dialogue, and have no idea that they're actually speaking with an automated system? I mean, this is the Turing test. And many of us have probably already heard or seen YouTube videos of people being fooled by that. It's already here. So we're just getting closer to closed loop systems.
How many years do you think?
Months. We're talking like 6 months. I mean, I've seen a couple of systems that work pretty well already. So it's just not necessarily something that's fully integrated. You have to daisy chain a few things together.
Mm-hmm. Everyone agrees with Taylor here, or has an opposite view? Ilya has something to say. Go ahead, Ilya.
I guess with the rising of all the automations and more tools, and now salespeople can do something that only developers could do this like 5 years ago, like scraping, extra automation, and so on and so forth. But in reality, it just feels like for me that like the best sellers will go in the opposite direction and will go less automation. And the reason why is that, the personal branding is a new company branding, and in B2B, the trust is really, really important. If people trust you personally, like they trust specifically you, they will trust the company and they'll start talking to you, and they will just do the proactive action. And how to build this trust? It's actually by building the personal brand. It just feels like more and more salespeople, those people who are actually interacting with potential clients, will need to build the branding and the actual social media presence by showing the expertise and the ability to help them. And when people understand that, okay, I know this person, I do believe that this person can help me because this person is an expert, I would go to this person and then I will work with this such a company. It feels like now it's a micro trend, but it's going.
Yeah. Joey, Chili Piper has a lot of employees or generally teammates who have a very strong thought leadership brands and trust personalities and just presence out there to be able. And then you have a followership. Even when we invited you for the event, a lot of people say, "Oh, I want to hear Joey speaking," etc., etc. So, do you agree with Taylor or with Ilya, or generally like the role of the personal brand and into actually helping into generate leads, generate sales, and build the pipelines?
Yeah, I think my initial reaction to the question was probably more aligned with Ilya. I think there's really good points though, both. I think the more automated the entire process gets, I think actually like the more important the small part of it that is human becomes. I think as buyers, and I mean we've seen this in the last few years, continue to see like buyers get more and more educated about, competitive differentiators between products, free trials, giving them hands-on experience with figuring out what product works the best. I think the connection between the seller and how much the seller is actually able to help them in the process becomes even more of an important part of it, where a seller isn't going to differentiate themselves by, maybe how they know the differentiating features between them and competitors, but will differentiate by how helpful they're able to be in the process. So I think in that way it is becoming more and more of a human process.
Anyone else has to add anything on this for this topic, or we're moving on to the next question?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's going to be interesting to see, obviously, what happens. But I think anything we talk about, if Amir, you talk about customer success, that could be, automated. Like, what is the threshold, right? Where if the AI is that good, if it's doing that versus outbound. And I think what's been said here, it boils down to two things on any of these things, and that's how important is the trust with that salesperson. How good is the salesperson at building, that trust, and how important is that human essence to that prospect. Now, some prospects, they don't care. People want self-service. They want that, and that's been happening since I started sales. Amazon has changed the way people buy, and AI, is just going to help that. But people still, look for salespeople to help them in a consultative way to understand problems they didn't have. And AI, I think, will help that. But at the end of the day, there's a human element, and maybe I'm naive, but the example's been kicked around on LinkedIn a lot. People pay for a real painting that was painted by a human much more than they'll pay for a print, even if they can't tell the difference. And there's something in the essence of being human and the connection you have with people, the trust you can build, that I think we might overestimate. Might not, we'll see, but might overestimate what AI can do and the propensity for people to interact with AI on that level.
So basically, I was thinking when you were telling this that those that want to go up market, there'll be more human interactions, more, thought leadership, more sort of like presence, more collaborations. Those that would stay where they are, or like at the low market segment, high volume, then it will be more automation, more like access to like AI. But when we're talking about the up market, bigger checks, relationship type of buying committee type of sales, then we're still going to have a lot of selling, a lot of human interactions, using more traditional methods, where they can realize that, oh, this is about the relationship, not about the journey. Do you agree with that?
I think it's persona. I think maybe there is something for spending more money on something, but I think it's persona dependent. I mean, certain personas, as far as like, we sell sometimes into manufacturing companies and things like that. The type, it's based upon the prospect. I think we'll have to optimize our motions based upon who we're selling to and whether they value that human interaction or they want more of a self-service or an AI type of thing. And that will be one of the tools in our toolbox that we have to be able to leverage. But I think it's both what you're saying, Michael, but as far as the type of product you're selling, it's also persona dependent.
There are two questions in the chat from Liz and from Chris. Thoughts on cold texting, a role of SMS in sales prospecting. Can anyone who wants to take this one?
Mike, can I say something real quick?
Go ahead. We lost you there. I'm gonna make a meme of this.
Shut up.
Hey, go ahead, Amir. No,
He's frozen.
No.
Yeah.
Replacing. You guys can hear me?
Yes.
No, can hear me. We talk about AI replacing sellers, but we never talk about AI being the buyer, which I think is the biggest thing that people won't expect. But I expect that buyers will actually turn to computers. That's it. I'm off.
He actually took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say that once buyers are replaced by AI, then you can see sellers be replaced by AI, because one of the most important factors or functions in selling that AI can't replicate is empathy. It doesn't express or show empathy, and it's empathy. I'm sorry, I'm laughing about Amir. Empathy is extremely important when it comes to building relationships. And as long as the buyers are human, they're going to need that. They're going to want that, provided that the sell is not extremely transactional.
I won't trust AI to buy anything for me, although it's going to be qualified. Like if they're spending my money, I was like, no, I don't know. It's maybe I'm too conservative about this, but I don't trust that. Anyhow, let's, we have a question from the chat. Role of SMS, call texting. Did you see that HubSpot integrated the WhatsApp feature in a way for follow-ups, like you can text? And just generally, like the role of text and SMS right now. Anyone is leveraging call texting for prospecting? No?
Cold texting, no.
Yeah, not cold. And for follow-up emails, and it isn't legal to do it in cadences technically, unless you get opt-in.
Yeah, I think once you have a connection with the prospect where they're like in a sales cycle with you, and you ask permission, like how do you feel? Like, is it all right if I follow up over text? At that point, that could be really effective for making it more personal. But yeah, I think cold texting.
It's bad. Yeah, I have so many scammers. Like, there's, I probably received the SMS from like my co-founder Vlad saying that, hey, you know, you need to update me with whatever like this, and you're like, there's no way it's gonna happen, you know. So that's ridiculous.
Back in the days, we were building the community on Facebook, and that's actually the closed group. And we were reaching out to people via Messenger, you know, the Facebook Messenger, and then we were reaching out to people just, hey, hello, welcome to the community and so forth. And we were keeping like the chats and conversations with a lot of our clients via Facebook Messenger. I'm not sure whether it's the case of this.
The sort of like the next question I have, and I think we're gonna just finish with it because we're already almost out of time, is about like budgets. And the reason I wanted to ask this question about the budget is the fact that I'm seeing increase in acquisition like a lot from the last year, like because the conversions dropped down, the number of tools, the number of license increase, and just generally like, you know, now you have challenges with like Google releasing this new spam policies. LinkedIn is also you know, not allowing to send a lot, and then like the cost of prospecting increase, etc. Like, how much do you think should be an increase in terms of the budget allocated, and what is the budget allocated for outbound on average in terms of the ratio for ACV or LTV, or just in the marketing budget that should be allocated to anything SDR related, and how much more is that comparing to the trend that we've seen in this year? Is it more, less, etc., etc.? Anyone wants to share some thoughts on this? Anyone? So I'm the only one concerned about the budgets.
I did an hour-long webinar on this topic, and obviously it really depends on the niche, the industry, and where the business is. So, you know, these reports, they come out and take them with a grain of salt. So there's a report called like the CMO survey, and it gives you little benchmarks on how much CMOs by industry spend. But what kind of CMO is going to take the time to fill out a survey and give accurate answers? Not many. So yeah, like for startups and the SaaS space, you were looking at like a 20 to 30% of overall revenue being put back into marketing, with certain industries, whether they're in this colossal stage of growth, you could see as high as like 60, 70%. And with very traditional old school industries, I think the numbers were staggering. It was like 5%. So it is really up to obviously which acquisition channels you're using, the size of the company, and so many other things. So it's quite difficult, and I think that's why there was silence to be able to place a number, because every industry, every company, and every acquisition channel can be quite different.
Okay. I think right now we probably are spending the ratio between like 80-20, 80% inbound, 20% outbound, like leads, like mailboxes, outreach, et cetera. But then sort of like we are generating a lot from the outbound comparing to the inbound because of the cost of content is expensive and so on and so forth. So like the people here on this call, like what's the ratio that you have right now that maybe you can share for your industry? Because we have a marketplace here, we have a SaaS company, three SaaS companies, and we have service companies here as well. Like, do you have like a ratio, like in terms of maybe the appointments you generate, like when you think channel wise, how many inbound, how many appointments from outbound you guys usually look at?
Yeah, ours is about half and half.
Half and half.
Like
okay, this is interesting. Like with your volume, you have like, I know you guys have something like 500,000 unique visits for your blog or for your website, which is a lot, but you do 50-50 inbound, outbound. This is cool.
Yeah, it's hard to keep up. Our marketing team obviously does a lot, as you mentioned. But yeah.
But why do you do like 50-50 in terms of like appointments generated from outbound and inbound, right? And then the outbound are more like upmarket, like bigger companies. That's the case, or it's the same?
Similar split. Our outbound team, we only focus on companies up to a certain size. So like massive companies are more likely to come inbound for that reason.
Yeah.
But as far as who we're targeting, the split's similar.
Taylor, do you guys do any outbound?
Yeah, we do. It's split between LinkedIn outbound using burner LinkedIn accounts and email outbound using a number of burner domains and burner email accounts. I still think for the time being, it's a lot more organic growth and some interesting kind of partnerships that we've had some success from. I mean, honestly, like, again, every industry is going to be different. And once you kind of hone in on one channel working really well, and it can be propped up almost without having to change anything, then you can start focusing on other channels. I've made the mistake in the past of trying to do too many channels at once and ultimately, not getting enough value out of it. So, we do both inbound and outbound. And I think you're constantly iterating on different ways to up the conversion rate optimization.
Gotcha. All right. Before I let you go, one quick question, quick answer from each one of you. What is something that you're concerned of in terms of outbound for this year, or in terms of just acquisition for your business, for your industry that you're currently focusing on or trying to tackle, or something that you think that might happen for you? Like Amir, can you take the first one? The challenge, marketing challenge, you are looking to solve or think that might happen for your business in 2024 that you would address?
I think my internet's not good enough to do this. Can you hear me?
Here you go. Who won? Like David, can you go?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of buzz around having dual purpose AEs, so AEs that prospect for themselves instead of hiring SDRs or hiring agencies like us. And so that's something we talk to prospects about and is a legitimate thing for people to consider. I think that the pendulum will swing back as people realize that The AE role is tough and has very specific skill sets and things you need to coach on, from discovery to probing questions to follow up and things like that. Whereas, the SDR role has a whole nother set of very different things that you need to coach on and optimize and look at. And when you try to do both well, I think you do nothing well. But sometimes the market, because people have been trying to find ways to reduce cost of leads and reduce costs and increase close ratios, they do chase this. I think it will swing back, but those are one of the things that come up in a lot of our calls that we talk to our prospects about and walk through the pros and cons.
Taylor, Joey, you have anything to add? Something that you are foreseeing as a challenge in your line that you're going to be battling this year?
I think prospects' inboxes are just more and more full, and more and more. I think we see just kind of an eye roll response when you get a cold email or LinkedIn message, because people are getting so many. So I think just constantly the struggle to stand out within that is more and more difficult.
Taylor, for you?
I think I'm getting super deep into the hyper personalization, and that comes in the form of memes. I've learned that you can't really make somebody intrigued by your email by using their own picture. People freak out, and even though it's scraped directly from LinkedIn, like they get very weird. But I think there's a lot of really interesting use cases based off of, if I can get somebody into my platform, and it's maybe more specific to SaaS, I know it is, but being able to really dictate some interesting language based on how they interacted, what their company does, and using a few different prompts really dresses that up. And I think that's the type of stuff that's the cornerstone of what I'm talking about, which is replacing a lot of these long interactions via written text. So that's some of the stuff that I'm working on a day-to-day.
Ilya, what about you?
Actually, we are also SaaS business, so our challenges are a bit different from the service business. And actually, we help salespeople with the outbound. And actually, outbound is not a rocket science, but still, there are so many people who don't know how to do the proper outbound.
Yeah.
Right? So when it comes to the SaaS, it's less about how to do outbound for ourselves. It's more about, okay, how can we find the micro trends to leverage those micro trends, be one of the first who are actually solving one specific problem of the funnel, to leverage this and be a trendsetter. Because usually on the market, you always see some micro trends, some little details in the whole process that are solved somehow technically. Usually it might be solved by raising startups. They disappeared and they see these problems. That's why it's for us, the main challenge is it's usually like this, it's to try to define those micro trends and try to leverage them and be a trendsetter in this specific, for a specific niche, for a specific audience.
Gotcha. Guys, you know what my concern is, and just fear, is the fact that most of the platforms, like the rules of the game are not as clear. So for example, like even on LinkedIn, the content game, the thought leadership, even like building the audience is not algorithm driven anymore in a way that it was. So now it's like you always go down to the low position. Twitter is like a garbage, like with a lot of like just AI going in and out and so on and so forth. Inbox are floating, and I'm just, my concern is that there's no help from all of those platforms to be able to leverage some like free organic channel, and it's either a volume game where you just need to go volume and just look for this nitty-gritties and automation and AI, or again it's going to be just expensive personalization and some other like maybe offline things. So this is like my big concern. All right, Brian, you are the last one. If you share my concern or anything that you saw from Belkins that might be a concern, happy to add, and then we'll finish up for today.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with everything that everyone said. I mean, the landscape of prospecting is ever evolving, and it's going to continue to be a challenge to stay at the cutting edge of what's working and what's not working, especially when they don't provide instructions on how to win given certain channels and platforms. In the 90s, caller ID came out, calling became less effective, but still effective. COVID happened, everybody went home, and calling became even less effective, and now we're getting 50 emails a day from prospecting SDRs. But I think, it's a fun ride, and I'm glad that I'm on it with all of you. When you figure out the keys to the city, shoot it over to me too.
That's a great finish up, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, the audience. Thank you, everyone who've been staying with us for this 2 hours. It's been packed out of content. Love it. Thank you for preparing all this information. I would definitely work on for the next year to have it more smoother for everyone. But I appreciate the time, appreciate the engagement and the effort and just the knowledge sharing. I love that. And I think as long as people like yourself are working towards the common goal of building value for customers, building value for their companies, for their colleagues, and doing the knowledge sharing openly without getting paid for this, then we have a bright future. So thank you, everyone. And I appreciate everyone who been as the part of the Future of Outbound 2024. And I hope to see everyone in 2025. All right.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
Thank
you,
you so
Michael.
much.
Everyone.
Take care.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks, Michael.